So I believe we are recording now. Let's give it another minute or so to see if we catch anyone else. Have you talked to Carrie, Doug? He's on the phone.
And Ray, just a FYI, I just got an update. The mayor is still doing his press conference, so he may be a little bit late, okay?
Okay, that's cool. Hey, Doug?
Yeah.
Have you had a chance to talk to Carrie by any chance? See if she's
No, I have not actually. I haven't heard from her. But okay. By the way, Ray, how are we adding board members in as panelists or designated HANC people or what?
I think that's something that we could all maybe talk about. I honestly, when I set this up, I just set it up with the presidents as panelists, along with David Price and the mayor. So I'm open to any suggestion. So
I think we should, because this is a HANC meeting.
Yeah.
I think we should go ahead and open it up if anybody, really feels the need to get their face on the screen. Particularly people who are regular participants, but who may not be presidents, for example.
So I know Bob, he's always at the HANC meeting, so let me get him on board.
I also see some of the officers from some other neighborhood councils. Perhaps they would love to be. That's a suggestion.
Yeah, well, you may have some. Well, there's Linda, Natelli, Lori. Let me see if.
I would definitely like to see Lori's beaming smile.
Only if she behaves
Only if
herself.
she agrees, huh?
Only if she behaves herself.
Oh, doesn't she? She's a
Hey
Girl
there, guys.
Scout, Ray.
Is my voice coming through?
There you go. Yeah.
Unfortunately, yes.
Okay, Doug, Ray, this is a HANC meeting. Put us in.
I'm sorry?
This is a HANC meeting.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
all panelists.
I'm looking at who else is here.
We had 143 people online at the link meeting. It didn't create a problem.
Do you want us to stay on mute, Mr. Regalado?
It probably would create less havoc if we're all on mute, except for whoever's speaking.
Well, there needs to be an understanding before you tell people that they can't talk.
Well, I'm kind of getting ready to give the rules of the realm here. Okay, so Doug,
yeah.
If you ID some people that I might be missing who should be promoted.
Well, I don't know who might or might not care about being promoted. I was just thinking, like, you have, I see you have like Melanie from your board is on there, and Linda Denicia is the VP from Central. And since Carrie is not here, maybe Linda?
Okay, so I'm promoting Karen. Let's see.
Ray, I don't know, some people may end up being late because the email that was sent out by Empower LA. They said the meeting was going to start at 6:30.
The mayor's going to show at 6:30.
Oh, is that what it was?
And HANC is starting at 6 to get everyone on board. Yeah. Otherwise, it's going to happen like it's happening now. People will be dropping in late. So we're trying to get everyone online, and then maybe we could go through a level of some public comment on non-agenda items up front. So for the time being, I'm just going to go down and James Allen, you got the first shot at making a statement. If you don't mind, for public comment, let's give everyone, it looks like we have a few hands. Let's give everyone a minute to say whatever they need to say. So James, you're up. Unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Got you now. Yes.
All right. My only suggestion to running the meeting is that any neighborhood council board member be promoted to be visible so that the mayor can see who the harbor area neighborhood council members are.
Okay. So I'm promoting you to a panelist now, James. I'm easy.
I have a call, Fernando, with the mayor.
Pardon me? Okay, so I'm going to go next to Christian.
Could I make a quick suggestion, Ray, that as you call on people, if they desire to be promoted to panelists, they indicate that, and you can do it right then.
So
Good evening. Yes, am I audible?
Yes, you are. Go ahead, Christian.
Hello, honorable members of the various neighborhood councils. It's good to be here virtually with you. Wanted to give a quick public comment. Number one, I'm very displeased with how every level of government is handling the pandemic and the economic impacts to our populace. And that kind of ties with my other point, which is I work for the Harbor Neighborhood Relief Fund, which is it's sponsored by the nonprofit Feed and Be Fed, and we are collecting donations from the public, individuals, and governments and organizations to give emergency monetary aid to individuals being impacted by the pandemic. And so we're in fundraising mode. And some of your neighborhood councils have actually given to us, and we're very grateful. And that money is being put to good use. We're giving it to stakeholders who are on the verge of being homeless or food insecure. So we are helping them every week. We're doing deliveries. We're staying safe. We're using our physical distancing. I generally think that this kind of help should be coming from the government because it would be much more effective. They'd be able to raise much more money. But we're doing what we can with individual donors kind of at the,
Christian,
I guess, emergency end.
thank you, Christian. Your time, I appreciate what you're saying. Thank you. So let's go down to Noel. You're next. Noel, I believe, is one of your council members, right? Doug?
Right.
I've just promoted him also. Noel, would you like to say something?
Noel, are you awake?
I am awake. I was just not able to unmute myself initially. And let me start my timer here. Thanks for promoting me to the panelist. And also, it's great to have all of the neighborhood council representatives listening in. I want to say that we, 3 neighborhood councils in San Pedro supported the appeal of citizens protecting San Pedro of a project that had a lot of problems with it, and we're appealing it to the city council to try to correct the problems. Way over the FAR, the traffic study had some issues. It was categorical exemption from CEQA. And we're going to be reaching out to the other neighborhood councils in the area as well to give you more details and see if you would also like to support the appeal. But thank you so much.
Thank you, Noel.
Stop.
Okay, Victor Christensen, you are next. Unmute yourself.
Yep, I was just waiting for the little pop-up.
There you go.
Again, my name's Vic Christensen. I am a member of the San Pedro Peninsula Homeowners United, and I'm reading a very brief highlight version of a prepared statement from another member, Janet Gunter. And I'm also, I live about a half-mile away from the Rancho LPG tanks. So the highlighted brief version goes, the recent disaster in Beirut, Lebanon's main port, as a result of several hundred tons of ammonium nitrate that exploded. Only one of the tanks nearby here at Rancho LPV would cause a blast 10 times greater than that. These tanks sit up top a geological fault capable of generating a 7.3 to 7.4 magnitude quake, but they were only built to withstand a 5.5 magnitude earthquake. So a larger quake would lead to tank rupture and cataclysmic explosion. Yet these have been here for 50 years, almost 50 years, and nothing has been done to fix this problem. So with excuses that it would be too expensive to relocate, inoperable if permits were revoked, and that kind of thing. So, and that we have to live with this potentially devastating risk close to schools, residences, and the Port of LA itself.
Victor, your time is up. If you'd like to finish your thought.
That's a big problem.
Okay, thank you. Next, let's see, I have Gregory Ellis.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Great, thank you. I would just like to take my minute to build upon Mr. Christensen's statement about the LPG tanks, but just talk a little bit more broadly that in light of the Beirut explosion, we should be looking more generally at safety concerns at the port. Mr. Christensen spelled out pretty clearly the risks that the LPG tanks raise, but we do have a history. Thankfully, it's been a while since the last ship exploded in the port, but it has happened here. And in light of what just happened in Beirut, I think we should, as a group of neighborhood councils, refocus our efforts on looking at other risks in the port generally so that something like that doesn't happen here. Thanks.
Thank you, Gregory. Next, Mary Chan, I see your hand is up. And let me put you on just wanted you to panelist since you're on a neighborhood council. Please let me know that you're on a neighborhood council.
Greg Ellis is on coastal.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
So,
thank you.
Good evening.
There you go, Mary. Go ahead and you got your
Hi, I
minute going.
represent President Ray's Neighborhood Council of Northwest, and thank you so much for letting me join in. I also wanted to support the Mr. Christensen's concern about also the ports and with the dangers. Definitely. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's see.
Hey, Ray.
Yeah, who's that?
Bob here. You got
Oh,
about
Bob.
9 minutes. Why don't you promote everyone right now? HANC meetings are open to the public. It's
Okay,
not
thank
up to you to decide who gets to come in the door and who has to stand outside the door.
Thank you.
Well, I'd like to know what the ground rules are, because I'm coming to this meeting hoping to make a comment directly to the mayor about how to open local businesses in a safe and more efficient way. And it sounds to me like what we're going to have is just a bunch of prepared speeches where people are doing a bunch of axe grinding. That's all I've heard so far.
Well, this is just public comment on non-agenda items. You can make your comment,
And
or
it's
you
not
can
going
make
to
your,
happen because we got 50 people here and you're giving them a minute apiece. And the mayor is doing 7 minutes.
when the mayor gets here, we will suspend and go toward, let the mayor discuss what he is here to discuss. So thank you, Bob. Let me see. Let me go to Helen Zubik.
Dana? I'm from Wilmington Neighborhood Council.
Okay. Hello, are you there? Okay, I don't see her.
I'm sorry. Mine is just a statement. Doug, I'm having a hard time hearing you. And a few others when they're speaking. So we want to make sure that we're speaking clearly. Otherwise, a lot of us can't hear what's going on in the meeting.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Diana Nord, I think. Go ahead, sir, or ma'am. Can't tell, but.
That's me. Thank you. You know, I don't want to give a prepared speech, but I kind of have to, given a minute. But I really was hoping that the mayor would be able to hear our comments. As the neighborhood councils in San Pedro know, there's a kind of a development scheme going on here where the density bonus rules are being exploited to build these huge market rate developments with only a few affordable units. And there are already 478 empty market rate apartments here with 1,000 more in the works. And the problem is that they're avoiding CEQA. And our community is already impacted by environmental impacts from the ports. As you know, the EPA identifies this area as most at risk from pollution in California. And the port operations have caused respiratory disease and cancer clusters and devalued properties. And now developers are scooping up the devalued properties aided by the councilman and avoiding CEQA and further exploiting and potentially harming the community. So this is abuse on top of abuse. And since the mayor was coming here to talk about COVID-19 and LAPD reform, I want to point out that both the developers and the councilman are ex-LAPD officers, and this is really quite disturbing because right now we need to build trust and respect in communities of color. 82% of residents in this area are non-white.
Your time is up.
These
sir.
bad actors are doing just the opposite.
Thank you for your comments. Let's go to Glenn Bailey. Glenn? Hello, Glenn. Well, we can't hear you, Glenn.
I wasn't able to, I'm sorry, this is Noel. I wasn't able to unmute until you promoted me to being a panelist, so it's possible that Glenn also is having that same issue of not having a microphone icon he can unmute.
I have unmuted Glenn, so.
Okay.
All right, well, we'll move on. Cindy Cleghorn? Cindy?
Yes. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, got you.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you very much. Good evening. My name is Cindy Cleghorn, and I'm from Sunland, Tahunga, but I'm just wanted to remind everyone that the Congress of Neighborhoods is going to have an event, a virtual event on September 26th. And I want to make sure that everybody in the harbor area puts this on their calendar. It'll be in the morning, and the theme is Rising Together Through Challenging Times. This will be a kickoff meeting for meetings that will continue in the future as well, and into the new year. So please come out and get involved, neighborhood council leaders from across the city, and please join us on Saturday, September 26th in the morning, 9 o'clock. The registration will be going live in a couple of weeks, and so we look forward to your participation. And we also look forward to neighborhood council support. So in any way that you can support the Congress, please do. And if you have any questions, please get in touch with me through the nccongressla@gmail.com or the NC Congress LA website. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hey, Ray, Mayor is just wrapping up his press conference, and so the new ETA is 6:45. So we have 15 minutes before he, 15 minutes after 6:30 before he gets here.
Okay, thank you.
Ray, can I interrupt with a technical issue?
What's that?
I've done my audio. Everybody should be able to hear me. However, why am I listed 3 times as a panelist?
That I don't know.
I've never run into that.
Well, you're asking me questions that I have no idea how to answer that right now.
One of them has a hand raised. I have not raised a hand.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not an expert on this stuff.
Okay, I'm just wondering if, because
Ray, perhaps we should just remove the others who aren't Doug.
I would suggest that you do that. It's possible someone has come in here and just typed my name in there.
Yep.
For whatever reason.
Yeah. Well, you know, we have Julian on here. Maybe Julian can help us with something that we're.
That would be with pleasure. Can you help me promoting me as a co-host, and that way I can help you.
Can we have multiple co-hosts, Julian?
Yes.
Okay.
Also, I went ahead and removed them. So.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, you did it, David? Perfect.
Yeah.
Looking for you here, Julian.
Thank you.
In fact, Julian, you know, you could be calling out these names and all that if you'd like. So, Julian, I am. Oh, there you are. Okay. There you're now a co-host, Julian. Julian?
Yep.
You're a co-host now. So,
yeah, thank you very much.
So let me go back and see if we can get a few more people to speak here. Melanie, you're next. You want to talk?
Yeah, I just wanted to emphasize also I would like to be on a panelist since I am an executive board member for Northwest.
Is that all you want to say?
As well as I wanted to talk about what happened.
So hang on, Melanie.
Got it?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. For public safety, with everything with the refinery and with the Rancho stuff, we really need to take a good hard look at that. With everything that happened with Beirut, the type of products that they use, like Victor said, in a lot of their stuff. That could be us, the way it exploded that was stored in the warehouse there. That could definitely be us if something were to happen. So hopefully there will be more focus after this incident happening on our area to see what we can do to make it a little more safer.
Okay. Thank you, Melanie.
You're welcome.
And Linda Nutelli.
Hi, I just have a couple announcements. The Toperman Neighborhood Center is having a food drive for the entire month of August, and folks can donate to 131 North Grand Avenue in San Pedro. They're looking for canned food, including pop-up cans, peanut butter, jelly, pasta, oatmeal, cereals, cup of noodles, sugar, flour, rice, baby food and formula, diapers, and even some pet food. The second thing I wanted to mention is I would like HANC to come up with a protocol to be developed to present to BONC regarding relevant city agencies to address situations involving staff working directly for the councils. I made this statement at BONC, but maybe it would be better for it to come from HANC to develop a particular proposal. And finally, Victor, tell your sister Anne I said hello. I taught with her at Carnegie. She was a fabulous teacher.
Thank you, Linda.
You're welcome.
And let me promote you to. You're still with Central?
Yes.
You're now a panelist.
Carrie Scoville is also on. She should be promoted.
Is she there?
She's as an attendee under Brian Allen.
Let's see. Let me find her.
I just did it. Right.
Did you? Okay, good. Thank you.
By the way, I will point out that there is now an attendee using my name. So
I saw that, Doug.
I think someone's hacking you, Doug. You got stalkers. Tony Mercandante, you're up.
Yes, hello. I'm a resident of San Pedro and an owner. I'd first like to mention regarding the butane tanks. I've not heard one person who's commenting about that indicate whether or not they're an expert on explosives or agriculture. So it's hard to believe that somebody has the whole story of what's going on over there. I'd like to see some of the cruise ship companies that are not in operation right now consider leasing out their ships to house the homeless at the Port of LA. And I'd like to ask Mayor Eric Garcetti to consider lowering his salary or donating some of his salary to the homeless and people that have lost their companies. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Let's see. I have Valerie, no last name. Valerie? And unmute yourself, Valerie. Hello, Valerie. Okay, we're going to move on. Glenn Bailey, I know we tried to get you earlier. Can you unmute yourself?
Okay. Yes, that time it showed up. Great. Thank you very much.
There you go.
My name is Glenn Bailey, and I had hoped to follow Cindy, so I'll just briefly say that we do appreciate those neighborhood councils who've contributed to the Congress of Neighborhoods in the past, and we will give recognition to everyone who does so in the future. And even though going virtually will cost us less, we do have to build up our account. So for looking forward to the day when we can have an in-person event at City Hall or wherever venue that we are at that point. The money stays in the account year after year, even if it's not spent. We do need to have enough money to be able to operate a $50,000 event. The city, the department does give $10,000, but the rest is raised by neighborhood councils. So for those of you that may have $250 or $500, we do give you that recognition. Secondly, many of you who attended the LANC meeting on Saturday heard the presentation by the city clerk regarding the 2021 neighborhood council election changes. And as a result of that conversation, LANC has created a neighborhood council elections ad hoc committee. We're going to start off with just a brief conversations about some of those issues at 6:30 this Friday via Zoom. And so anyone who's interested is welcome to participate. And again, this is just the initial conversation to identify some of the issues that were raised during the meeting. If you email LANC, LANCC, at empower.
Lost Glenn. Hey, Doug, I see you as as an attendee, but I'm sure that's not you. But
Ray, I believe that attendee is Kathleen Martin from Coastal. I think she needs to be renamed and added as a panelist. She wrote inside the Q&A forum.
Okay, let me try for you, okay?
Oh, okay.
She's not able to unmute herself.
Hey, Doug, what's going on is that people are using the email that you forwarded to them. That's why your name popping up everywhere. So I think we should just all be Doug today.
Well, only if I can be Bob.
You can be Bob.
And I prefer to stay.
All right.
I do think we need to have rules.
Please rename yourselves, okay?
Yeah. If the person that that is an attendee with the name Doug Ephardt, if maybe that person can talk and state her or his name, that way we can change the name. Otherwise, for
I don't see Doug as an attendee any longer. I don't know what happened to it.
No, I'm down at the bottom.
Yeah, he's still here.
There.
You're still there.
Yeah.
Excuse me, Ray. Valerie's having a hard time unmuting herself. That's actually Gail Fleury. And she can't seem to get it to unmute.
Gail Fleury is the one that's identified as Doug Ephardt?
No, it's Valerie.
Oh, as Valerie.
Yes. She's on the neighborhood council rep. She's standing in for Valerie because Valerie had another meeting.
Okay. Well, she is unmuted. She should be able to speak.
Excuse me.
Hello.
May I speak?
And you are?
Karen Caesar, Harbor City Neighborhood Council. I've had my hand up like forever. So I'm just saying, I'm Harbor City Neighborhood Council Treasurer, and chair of the Committee on Homelessness. So, and I see Danielle Sandoval, our president, is on here too. Harbor City is a part of the harbor area. So just reiterating that in every meeting that I'm in.
Okay, so Karen, Karen, you're promoted to a panelist.
Okay, do you see Danielle on there also?
Danielle.
Yes, I'm there.
Okay. But I don't think she's a panelist, but I think she should be.
She's a panelist.
She's a panelist. She got the invite direct, so.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Going back to attendees for some more here.
Okay.
I have next Gustavo at Harbor Gateway South Neighborhood Council. Can you unmute yourself? Gustavo? Okay.
Ray, maybe, sorry, Commissioner Regalado, maybe we can allowed to talk Doug Epperhart, that is a part of the attendee, because he or she raising his hand or hand.
Hello, Ray. This is Gus. I'm sorry, I couldn't talk, but I'm in. Just Harbor Gateway South Neighborhood Council here.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to say my name.
Go ahead, Gustavo. I have it down as Gustavo, so go ahead.
Yeah. No, like I said, this is Gustavo. I just wanted to say my name, Gustavo, from the Harbor Gateway South Neighborhood Council. I'm the safety chair, and I just want to join the meeting. Okay.
Okay, I'm going to promote you to panelist.
Thank you.
Ray Regalado, this is Lori Jacobs from the Northwest Neighborhood Council. I've had my hand up as a panelist. If I could make a suggestion.
I'm going down the line little by little.
My hand was raised before any of those attendees. I just want to make things easier for you, sir. May I suggest that anybody who is not promoted, just go into the Q&A, list the neighborhood council you're on, and let your moderator, Julian or David, go ahead and promote them so you can just run the meeting and not have to focus on that. That's just my suggestion, because this is getting kind of crazy and people are getting their feelings. And I do have my hand raised, but I will wait until you call on me for what I want to say.
Could we get the other Dougs renamed, because it's starting to be creepy?
Doug?
Oh, there's one of them, yeah.
Doug here. I'd like to know what the rules of procedure are. Will we be allowed to ask questions or make comments to the mayor?
The mayor will take some questions, right, David Price?
And who will decide who gets called on?
David Price will be handling that part when the mayor.
Okay, David, could you at least introduce yourself so I know who to be mad at?
Sure, I can introduce myself. Hello, everyone. My name is David Price. I serve as the South LA area representative, your area representative, Joanna Rodriguez, who you all may be familiar with. I'm sure you know her very well. She's out right now, and so I'm just stepping in to assist for this meeting, and it's a pleasure to be here. And yes, there are questions that the member will be taking. I know he has a tight timeline, but he'll give us a little extra time because he's running a little bit late, but we'll be sure to get as many questions answered as possible.
David, I wonder if I could make a brief suggestion to you.
Bob, you've had quite a bit of time here, and I'm trying to get through some of these things. So.
Well, that's what I'm trying to get at. We're obviously have a bunch of people who want to talk about the butane tanks. Why don't we ask them to select one representative and give them a minute to talk to the mayor? I want to talk about opening up local businesses and how we might, as neighborhood council people and the HANC, assist in that. And I think that a minute should suffice to that. But right now, everything is very haphazard because we've had such an incredible turnout.
Right. So I think what's worked in the past that's worked really well for these meetings is that we've used the Q&A section as the space where people can write out their comments and their questions. And if time permits, we will try to get to every question that we possibly can. And I would, just because there are so many folks here on the call, I think that is the best mechanism for us tonight.
So there you go. Write your questions out in the Q&A, and David will look at them and pick them out.
How do I put a question in there? I see the Q&A thing. Somebody want to explain that?
Type it.
Well, where do you click open or what?
Just click on Q&A and a window will open.
Right.
The window is open. Now what?
Go to the bottom and type it in.
Thank you. We'll give it a try.
Ray, can I ask you to promote the minute taker to panelists?
Sorry, who's the minute taker?
Cheryl Ackerblom.
I am looking for her name.
He's listed as Doug Epperhart.
So which one?
You know how
Yeah,
many?
which
I mean,
one?
there were many. I wouldn't have no idea who Doug Epperhart is, except for the gentleman on the screen. So I think they're not helping the thing.
Hey, Ray,
Because
point of information.
Kathleen, sorry.
I've got a point of information. I just went into the Q&A, and as a panelist, it looks like we can answer questions, but it doesn't seem to allow us to ask questions. So we have to ask questions live.
That's right.
So there seems to be no way to direct a question or a comment.
Yeah, you do it live if you're a panelist.
Okay, and how do I?
Okay, hold on.
Raise your hand and get called on.
Ray?
Only attendees can enter questions. Panelists raise their hand.
Jeez, I sure hate this thing.
That's weird because I can do the Q&A, I think. No, I can't. Never mind.
Oh,
Nope,
okay.
I can just answer them.
Andrea Herman is also Coastal San Pedro, and she needs to be admitted as a panelist.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Can we allow the dogs Everhart to speak so that way we can identify who is whom? Because they're both raising their hands, so I don't know which one is Kathleen Martin and which one is the minute taker.
So I have a Doug here. Let me. This first Doug is unmuted, so he or she can.
And they're gone.
Speak and identify him or herself. Hello, anyone?
Come on, Doug, talk to me.
Gee, Doug, you're making life difficult here.
I didn't know it was going to do this. I never run into something like this.
I have another Doug here.
Go and click on the other one. I think one of them is Kathleen Martin.
Yeah.
And now you know why when it says keep the code unique, it's to you. You don't share that. You just give them the webinar ID for future reference. Lessons learned.
Thank you, Lori.
I want to be a Doug too.
I'll send you the link.
But you can rename yourself.
You know, this is getting really unwieldy here, trying to figure out who some of these people are. So I think we're at 6:45. David Price, do we have a ETA on the mayor?
Not yet. I think he should be joining soon. I'm waiting on this update, this text to come in. I'll let you know ASAP.
All right. Let me see.
Mr. Chair, could I make a suggestion?
Yes. Go ahead.
Can we take the agenda down and show who's the visuals of who's on the meeting at this point so that we can visually more interact? It might make it easier for you, actually.
And also, Andrea Herman just says Andrea. She needs to be admitted as a panelist because she's on CSPNC.
Andrea?
Yeah, I just did it.
Yeah, Andrea. Just shouldn't have her last name. Just says Andrea.
Yeah, I just did it.
Oh, great. Thanks, Julian.
And Grant Reed too, please.
What is the first name? Sorry.
Grant Reed.
Yep, done.
And Kathleen Martin, now that she's been renamed something other than Doug.
There she is.
Doug, you're so popular.
Linda Alexander. Linda Alexander needs to be promoted.
Done and done.
Any other people there?
Cheryl's under Cheryl Arkerbaum now, down there.
I see her. There you go. Okay.
Ray, is it possible for me to speak on public comment yet?
Lori, go ahead. Your turn.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I just want to mention that I hope Hank will take a stance, and we still need to address the issue we have with neighborhood councils being allowed to hire their own administrative staff and then have it approved through vendors that have been authorized by the city clerk. The issue still remains a real handicap to all of our neighborhood councils. We need to keep pushing to get this addressed, and at least to have somebody go to the person who was terminated and tell her why she was terminated. It is not, a due process was not served here. This is not a legal action, and we need to push to get answers on this issue. Most of the neighborhood councils that are on this meeting are suffering because of this. And it's gone on for way too long. We need action. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. Okay. I have Olive here. Olive, which I do believe I see the mayor there. Good evening, Mayor. You are muted.
How's that? Can you hear me now?
There you go.
Yeah, perfect.
Absolutely.
Sorry, we had to switch devices here. So.
Good evening, Mayor. I'm Ray Regalado, and everyone that you see here are associated with various neighborhood councils in the Harbor area.
That's good. Good to see you all, and thank you for your patience and flexibility. I appreciate you. I just came from my nightly press conference. We were in Lincoln Park celebrating or commemorating at least 1 million tests through the city test centers. So thanks for your patience while I rushed home to be on this. So you want me to go ahead and start, or you want to say a few things before I get started?
No, we've been saying quite a few things.
Okay. All right, good.
It's all on you.
You've been tap dancing for a little while. Great. Well, thank you. I'll jump straight in. And I know that many of you may have been at the Alliance meeting, so forgive me if you hear for a second time some of the updates, but I think they're important enough for me to restate them to anybody who wasn't on that call this weekend. And thank you for inviting me, and thank you for, first and foremost, what I say at the beginning of these is I hope you're all looking out for yourselves, for your spiritual, mental well-being. I know how, I was asked a question at the press conference just now. We're about to hit 5,000 deaths in LA County, and we don't expect deaths to go away until COVID-19 does. How do you deal with that? And I don't have a good answer. I think we're all holding a lot of pain. My dear brother, Mayor Robert Garcia, who lost his mother last Monday. I lost a first cousin of my father. We lost a police officer and a firefighter. Our police officer who died was, his partner was pregnant with his twins, or is pregnant with his twins that were due. It's just a devastating human toll. And that's before we talk about the economic insecurity that so many people face and the other critically important moments around racial justice and who we're going to be. I've been looking at a lot of history and pandemics, and historically when they hit Europe in medieval times, they'd usually throw out whoever was in power and often kill them. So I know that it's not necessarily personal. It's a part of, we don't like being told what to do. We hate the idea of a pandemic and being quarantined, and it's immensely difficult to get through this and to deal with this. That said, I'm very, very proud of Los Angeles in the most trying circumstances we've ever had. Proud of the way that we've led, and that, I think people think of science as the answers that science comes up with. In other words, when people say follow the science, there must be a clear answer what to do with COVID-19. Close this, open that, do testing in this way. People forget science is actually the testing of things, finding what works, finding what fails, and moving forward until you do find the truths that allow you to control the problem or understand the problem that you're facing. So I want to jump into COVID-19 because it is everything, and then get into a few other issues and open it up to you. And thank you, Ray, for your leadership and the entire Alliance and everybody who's a part of an area of the city that often felt like the forgotten end. And when I became mayor, I said, you're more like the anchor of the kite of the city. Everything that happens in the harbor dictates how the rest of the city moves. And I really feel that. And the amount of time I've been able to spend in the harbor communities. And it's never enough. Once you become mayor, you realize 100 plus neighborhoods. Nobody sees you enough. But don't tell the other ones, because I see my schedule and I get to see the percentages. Disproportionately, I've been able to spend time directly in harbor communities and to really see and tackle some of the toughest economic issues, housing issues, public safety issues, and I'm grateful for that. So let me update you with COVID-19. What I just told the public is that we have some fragile but good news. That in the last 2 weeks, we've seen some of the most important indicators. We tracked 6 indicators, main ones, from testing rates, deaths, cases, hospitalizations. And for the first time in over a month, 5 of those 6 are heading the right direction. Only deaths is up slightly. And as I always said, that was going to be a lagging indicator. So for the first time, 5 of those 6 are headed in the right direction. And if we keep this up by next week, I believe, as early as next week or the week after, we'll see deaths, I think, also follow. So we may be 6 out of 6 on the right way. A lot of people were worried a couple weeks ago when I said we were on the brink of going to red. And in many ways, we really were. I think that also made people panic because they're like, what are we going to do, a full shutdown? And my question back was, well, what's left besides dining indoors? Besides retail, there's not a lot that is open. And we're never going to be fully open. We're never going to be fully closed, but we are getting smarter, being able to preserve jobs and keep things open, even as we sometimes have to tighten the tap a little bit. Right now, we're seeing the spread happen in a few different places. It's getting younger and it's getting browner. Early on, we saw, and this is in the harbor area, we know there's a lot of Pacific Islander community and Native Hawaiian. That's probably the worst in terms of the numbers of deaths, the highest percentage of any ethnic group. Early on, we saw as many cities across America, African-American deaths almost double the population, but we surged testing where African-American Angelenos live. And we're the first city to be able to say that we've cut the Black deaths to under the population where we are. Taking out our skilled nursing facilities, African-American deaths are under the population of the county because we believed in that, surged that up. Now in the Latino community, while we have a 10% positivity rate of testing, in the general population, it's 14.2% among Latinos. And so we're trying to do everything, not just to continue opening up testing, which is the most aggressive in the country and most widely available and the fastest turnaround of any big city. In fact, you can get a day of testing. Many of the last few days we've been open, and it's a 23-hour turnaround time, which is really impressive. But we are also taking testing to communities. So we are going to be in many areas, including in Wilmington, all of our public housing developments. We're taking testing to the street without an appointment, where we go into a community, let people know. And so in any of the harbor communities where that's helpful, please let us know and we will surge that to you because that's a big part of pushing this down and reaching communities. In the Latino community, we're doing a lot of public messaging to let people know not to be scared. And on contact tracing especially, a message you can help us amplify is if you get a call from LA County Public Health, please answer it. They're getting 75% of their calls answered, but that means 25% are not. And often when they are getting answered, especially in the Latino community, they're only giving a name or two instead of all their coworkers and all their family, because a lot of Latinos, especially Spanish-speaking ones, are scared that somehow it's government and somehow this is going to be against the backdrop of immigration, enforcement that's happened under this administration. And when it comes to this, I don't care what your politics are. I don't care what your philosophy is when it comes to immigration. This is a public health requirement that we touch everybody as quickly as possible to quarantine and or isolate people when they're positive or when they've been exposed to somebody who is. We're going to be in this. I think the public health official told me last week or 2 weeks ago, this was a baseball game. We're in the bottom of the second. I know that's devastating to say and to hear, but I think we should realistically expect that even if we get vaccines that are approved and ready in January, February, before they get distributed and massed up, it's going to be earliest the end of probably the spring and maybe well into the summer. So an entire school year, if you want to think through it that way, of us still dealing with COVID-19 and some level of society not being completely open. I'm very passionate about trying to help our schools get open, which is a delicate dance, but I've been convening national leaders today. I've brought together a number of mayors, CEOs of 7 different companies, the head of the Rockefeller Foundation and others, public health officials, to see whether we can get cheaper, faster tests that are not the ones we're taking right now, but paper strip tests that would be $1 to $5 each that we could distribute in the millions to people, especially students and families. It's still probably at least a couple months away, but we're going to be part of the first pilot in the country, and Rockefeller has just agreed to fund that, working with USC. These are tests that are about 50% as sensitive, but they're sensitive when you want them to be. The bell curve of the viral load, you know, when you get sick, your virus load is low, and then it ramps up quickly, and then it trails off. We're paying a lot of money to catch people here when nobody's really getting tested, and here when they're no longer infectious. But for the 14 days when the viral load is most and we're most infectious, these tests are pretty darn good, close to the sensitivity of our normal tests for as little as 1/100th the price. So know that I'm always trying to position LA as an innovator. Take the risk, don't wait for somebody else to do it, put our money out there on the line and see what we can do. And then finally, whatever help you need with businesses, both complying with and those who refuse to comply with. And when we saw the house parties, I announced today, we're gonna be able to shut down water and power in those homes that are throwing parties that are Airbnb mansions, because you can get the police there one night, but if they're there the next night, the only thing that shuts them down is turning off their power. Or whether it's businesses that have just been rocked and rolled back and forth, restaurants that need help with Al Fresco, which Councilmember Buscaino has been a great champion of, or other things. Please let us know. We're a resource for business, but we also have to make sure that people are following the rules. We have LAPD not finding people for masks, but instead handing masks out. That started this weekend, 20,000. We started with Pacific and Hollywood Division, but maybe we can do that at Harbor Division too, in places that you help us with where people are not wearing masks. I'd rather say, hey, I'm an LAPD officer, would you like a mask, rather than here's a $100 ticket and it might not have much of an effect on anybody else besides that one person. And not turn our city into a police state, but one in which we're all trying to encourage, educate, and then assist people in compliance. A few other things. Census is so important. We have a really lousy response rate compared to the state and the country. In some places we're as low as 30%, our average is 52%, but the state is already at about 63% and the nation approaching 2/3. We need everybody to make sure we're not sending our tax dollars elsewhere. So anything you can do to do census drives, we have an amazing team that is full-time working on this. We have census ambassadors that can go door to door with proper PPE. And if you ever want to do that alongside with us, we usually bring testing together with our census ambassadors, and then we go door to door. So we'll look at some of those places where the numbers are low in harbor area neighborhoods. And if you ever want to do that with us, open offer to do that one weekend. And I often go out there myself to do it in a safe manner, but an important one. And if you want to check this out, you can go to, we'll put this out there, but bit-ly, bit.ly. Some people know that's the kind of abbreviated website, but bit.ly/2020 canvassing if you want to help do that. And we are going to be in Wilmington on August 9th. We're going to be doing a census canvass beginning at the rec center at 1 p.m. So come on down. The response rate at San Pedro is 44%. Harbor City, it's 45%. In Wilmington, it's less than 27%. So we really need to get those numbers up. I don't know what it is in Harbor Gateway, but I'll try to get those numbers as well. Lastly, let me kind of talk about public safety, because that's a huge part of what everybody's been talking about, and then we'll get to the Q&As. This is a moment not to just kind of find, I think, hashtags or slogans, but to do some really hard work of building on a really strong foundation and listening to where we still continue to fall short as a nation, and sometimes even as a city and a department, when it comes to owning public safety and feeling it equally across the city. There's no question that we have incredibly heroic police officers that put their lives on the line every single day and save lives and transform them. And there's no question that we still have troubling statistics that show disproportionate, and we might do better than other cities, but we still don't do well. The number of Black Angelenos that get stopped, we've cut in half our police deaths at the hands of LAPD officers, and we're 82nd out of 100, but I want to continue driving that down even further. And leading on reforms like what we've done with GRID, Community Safety Partnership, and other things that put less of a burden on the old model and don't require a 911 call and a police officer to respond to everything that we have. So this is not about punishing a department. This isn't about which side you're on. This is about so much that we've thrown on the backs of our police departments where we don't always have the best outcomes. When it comes to mental health, for instance, we'll probably be piloting in the next couple months something with the county mental health department where from fire stations, we have 24/7 coverage. How many of us have always I've had somebody who's maybe experiencing homelessness and mental health issues at 2 a.m. We don't have anybody called but a police officer. We need to change that, right? See Lori putting her hand up. I have that in my own home. Oh, sorry, I don't know if that was you, but Bob said it too. I have a guy who screams at the end of my block, and there's nobody to call at 2 a.m. besides a police officer. We have to change that, where we can bring clinicians and other people out to actually solve that. So $150 million wasn't taken out of the police department to punish it, in my mind. I want you to hear this clearly from me. It's to look at investments that can help save lives and do things like what we've done with GRID, find alternative partners to public safety. Wherever we did GRID and community safety partnerships that include also not police officers for some of this, we've reduced crime by more with fewer arrests than the city at large, where we've seen huge drops in crime. And we're not seeing a huge surge in crime. Homicides are up a little bit, but it still would be the 5th best year when it comes to homicides in our history. And we're seeing all major crime, including even shots fired, down in the city this year. But we know that we have a mortality rate that is double that of white people for Blacks and Latinos in LA County. So part of our conversation is, how do we broaden this out to be about health and wealth building? How do we make it about as well opportunities around education, and make investments that can stop public safety issues from arising before they do, by making sure that we have greater opportunities for people who don't start at the same starting line as everybody else. So my commitment is to pursue and to lead on racial justice more than any other city in America, and not to pander, but to ponder. It's kind of the phrase that came up in my head the other day, to really not just say check or to pander to people on this side or that side, but to say, hey, if we all want to co-own and co-create the next chapter of public safety, let's do it together. Nobody's excluded from that conversation, and neighborhood council should have a huge role in that. So there's a lot more detail I'm happy to go through, whether it's expanding community safety partnership, putting a moratorium on putting people in the Caligan database, listening to the police department about what's worked and listening to advocates about what hasn't, conversations between community members and police officers that we're setting up, the police commission passing some of the most wide-ranging reforms in the country 2 weeks ago, with, by the way, no coverage from the LA Times, even though tens of thousands of people were on the streets calling for this kind of stuff. We passed it. Unfortunately, I know that doesn't hit the story that some want to portray, but we actually did that work, listened, and passed things without opposition from our police union, who I have not always seen eye to eye with. But it shows that progress is possible with everybody at the table, and we don't have to be always in opposition with one another. So with that, let me turn it over to, I think, the questions that we had. And with that, I'd be happy to, you can either read them out or I have them here. David Price is going to help moderate, who, by the way, has done extraordinary work. Thank you for all your good wishes to his counterpart, to Johanna as well, who, as many of you know, was afflicted with COVID-19. She's doing okay, but it's been a tough slog. She's had some tough diagnoses, or some tough symptoms, I should say, but she's going to be okay. But thank you for all your love and support of her and David. So with that, David, I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thanks, Mayor. There were a number of folks who submitted questions, and we'll take those first. There's a question from Ms. Lori Jacobs on the call tonight from the Northwest San Pedro Neighborhood Council. She asks, there are currently over 4,000 formerly homeless individuals placed in Project Room King motel sites who are assured they would not have to return to the streets. So what will happen as the federal funding is being eliminated and the country cannot afford to keep the program active?
Thank you, Lori, for that question. 2 years ago, I said we needed a FEMA level response to homelessness. That I just looked at the dollars, and even with HHH passing and H and historic amounts that we got out of the state through our advocacy, I just realized this problem is bigger than any funding local government can find. As a side note, I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat, just as a point of information, I'm one of the co-chairs of Joe Biden's campaign. I got into our platform and worked with other candidates running, and I've actually tried to get Ben Carson to adopt this too, because we've become friends. I don't care who the president is, but to expand Section 8 housing to make it a universal entitlement. That would be the single-handed biggest way we could get everybody off the streets of America. And it's in the platform of Joe Biden, which I think is incredibly important. But waiting for national help, and I do want to thank Ben Carson, who helped due to the conversations we had and a visit to LA. It's the most unlikely of buddy movies, Eric Garcetti and Ben Carson, but we've hit it off and we're friends. And he helped us get $167 million in emergency solutions grants, formerly known as emergency shelter grants. And Governor Newsom, who devoted his whole State of the State address this year to homelessness, one topic, never been done ever before COVID-19, he stepped up to provide some historic dollars through the CARES Act dollars California has. We are now moving from Project Room Key to the state having Project Home Key, which will be moving folks from Project Room Key rooms into homes. How does it get done? It's going to be an all the above kind of approach, and we'll announce later this week that HACLA, our housing authority, which is the most nimble department to be able to bid on apartment buildings, who already owns apartment buildings, and not just public housing, they own formerly private buildings. They can move really quickly. They have some funds they can bring together with city funds and some of these state dollars. We're going to be applying for over $250 million to be able to acquire buildings and long-term leases. So some motels don't want to sell. It's all the family has, but they're willing to entertain a 5-year lease. That's something great. Others might be apartment buildings that were suddenly hit by this depression and they can't pencil out finishing things off. We can build it out and we can finish it and own it. So we're going to be looking at thousands, hopefully, of rooms that we can buy. And in some cases, we'll construct things. A lot of council members are looking at kind of the pop-up tiny homes that work now in a modular way. So we're going to be and others will give Section 8 vouchers to, and other vouchers to place them in existing housing or congregate living. We know that the one person experiencing homelessness is not like the other. So some want to live together, some don't. Some are going to need housing subsidized for us for decades, and some just need a year or two and can get back on their feet. So we've made a pledge of 6,700 people, more than those that are in Project Room Key, that the county and the city, through the lawsuit, it became a good mechanism for us to find a common agreement. The county will step up with $300 million, and we'll match with whatever on the capital side. The county will take care of services, and we'll take care of the rooms. So we're going to go way beyond the 4,000. Now, I want to be clear, that doesn't mean all 4,000 people will accept it. Some will head back to the street, but even if we get 2/3, for instance, out of our city shelters that we opened up in our rec centers, we've been transitioning people out of those and closing them down to get ready for things like childcare. 27 people left out of our shelters this past weekend. I wanted these statistics. 16 of them landed in other shelters or permanent housing. That's nearly 2/3. Usually we bat about 10%. So those numbers are really good numbers. We're never going to get 100%, but if we can get half to 2/3, that will make a huge dent. And I'm confident between the 6,000 people we've housed and all the bridge homes that have opened up, we're going to finally see one of the bigger dents, I think, in the homeless population. You'll still see plenty of encampments. You'll still say homelessness is everywhere. But this year, I have confidence will be the first year that we should see a reduction. And the last thing I'll say, sorry for the long answer, is usually when the economy turns bad, the only silver lining is homelessness actually can go down. And people say, wait a second, why? People lose their jobs. It's because rents cool off. So in 2009, we saw homelessness go down. And suddenly when the economy did really well and rents went up, even though many more people were working, homelessness went up. It's a counterintuitive thing, but if it plays out like past ones, we may see those things come together, not to cause a lot more people to be homeless, but a lot more people to be able to stay in housing, combined with the new housing and the more than 1,200 units of HHH housing that will open this year and more than 2,000 next year on top of all that. So I have reason to be cautiously quite optimistic, but this is a problem that burns you every single time you get optimistic, but I really do believe it's going to be more than ever before. Thank you, Lori. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. The next question comes from Valerie Contreras from the Wilmington Neighborhood Council. Valerie is also on the call tonight. She asks, how can you guarantee the safety of the public in light of LAPD's reduced budget?
Well, thank you, Valerie. And to be clear, I wouldn't make any cuts or reallocations if I didn't think that they would have a positive impact on public safety. I hope I made clear that my vision of public safety isn't just about a police budget. It's about our grid budget. It's about our intervention programs. It's about investments in youth. It's about alternative dispute resolution. When you look at the number of calls that LAPD officers go to that are not, quote unquote, hardcore crime, it's most of their calls. So we've asked them to be social workers. We've asked them to do so many different things. And if we can take some of that load off of their backs, they can focus even more on cutting crime in our communities. When we invest in programs like Community Safety Partnership, and sometimes that requires more resources, not less, because it is a more expensive program than quote unquote normal policing. We'll find the dollars to do that too. This is a budget that you can either count at 1.8 billion or 3 billion if you want to include retirees and pension costs and things like that. But that's a huge budget. $150 million cut is less of a cut than we see in other departments and still puts them above where we were just a few years ago. And I think that, looking at everything that we have, I'm confident that our LAPD officers will be able to do their role and we'll be able to help them have others, just as we did with grid. I remember when we started grid, people are saying, why are you putting money into that instead of building it up to 12,000 officers? We don't have enough officers like New York City. We're half per capita. And I think the proof was in the pudding again. We showed a greater reduction where we invested in gang reduction. And lastly, I'll say too, is it's more effective policing. When we stopped doing kind of random traffic stops, for instance, in South LA, which was essentially a kind of stop and frisk of drivers, we were able to see crime go down even more. South Bureau had its safest year in history. So remember, we were able to put that into better things like patrols, community interactions, and deeper investments. So I think it's about how smart you are, not just about that bottom line number, and know that those investments are about public safety that we're putting elsewhere to help LAPD not have all the shoulder of that.
Thanks, Mayor. The next question comes from Doug Epperhart from the Coastal San Pedro Neighborhood Council, and Doug's on the line today.
Hey, Doug.
Is there any consideration of ticketing people for not wearing masks in public?
Yeah, I addressed that a little bit. It is something I keep in my back pocket, so I reserve the right to do it. You know, cities like West Hollywood are doing it. I asked Mayor of West Hollywood, who's a friend, how many are they doing a day? They said 15. If I made that the same per capita for LA, and sheriff's deputies there have, you know, very low crime. They have things that they have time that they can do this. We'd be giving about 2,000 tickets a day out. I think this is a very volatile moment, especially in communities of color, around policing and what they do. So I think for me, I'd rather be building trust rather than having them be the masked police right now. And I got to be honest with you, LAPD officers do not want to be doing this as well. They'd much rather be handing out masks and with a badge on, encouraging people. Trust me, when a cop gives you a mask and has a badge on and say, hey, do you need a mask? That gets us there without a $100 ticket on somebody. That could be very difficult. And imagine when people start doing the stats, what communities, what colors, et cetera. So I do reserve the right. If things really are skewing up and we're seeing mass people stopping to wear masks, it is something that is kind of a last resort thing that I would do. But in the meantime, I'm feeling good that we're able to bend these curves down by continuing to educate people. I'd also say for everybody fixate on masks, fixate on washing hands. I can say it myself. I think I stopped washing my hands as much as I did at the beginning until I realized that is as critical as wearing a mask. We've got to keep pushing back, whether it's masks, washing your hands and surfaces, or keeping distance. We still see too many people who are like, well, I know that person. I can be within 4 feet with them because I have a mask. Keep that distance 6 feet minimum and those things together. But I'm not going to start giving a ticket to people who are standing 3 feet away from each other. We're going to try to encourage people. And lastly, Doug, I'd say if we did go to enforcement, if I think we were ever to kind of move forward on that, I wouldn't want it maybe to be police officers, but I also don't want to put city workers at risk. I'd want to put, you know, building and safety folks who do enforce the mask law on our construction sites, for instance, DOT folks and others who could do it without it being necessarily a police officer. But I also know we've had DOT officers punched about parking. It's a very volatile time out there right now, and I want to protect them too. So hear you loud and clear. We've considered it. Councilmember Koretz pushes hard for it all the time with me. I think our city attorney would like to do it, but I'm going to hold the line until the numbers get terrible, and hopefully they won't, and we won't have to, because I'll say this, through the eyes of outsiders who visit us, they're like, wow, I can't believe how many people wear masks in your city. For those of us who fixate on who doesn't, it always seems like there's a lot that don't, but by and large, we're at the top of the list in America right now.
Thanks, sir.
Okay. Thanks, Doug.
Next question comes from Celia Alcala, who is from the Harbor Gateway South Neighborhood Council. Celia is also on the line tonight as well. She asks, is there data available regarding tracing for people infected with COVID? Has the surge in cases been tracked back to people who attended protests, participated in restaurants offering outdoor eating, or just someone who goes out occasionally and still got infected? What are the percentages of the people infected who attended the above activities?
I wish we had that kind of data, and I pushed the county to ask. It's tough, you know, there's hour-long conversations just to first get the contacts that people have had before they kind of go into that level of detail. And I've pushed Dr. Ferrer, who I think is extraordinary, by the way. He's become a very good friend. She's got amazing people who are so overworked, so much so that I've offered, and we have almost 400 city workers working as contact tracers. I don't care about who's supposed to pay for stuff. As you saw with testing, I thought testing was a county health responsibility, but early on when they said they weren't going to do testing, I just jumped into the void. And all of our testing centers test people in LA County regardless of whether they live in the city. So LA City drive-through tests are doing 3/4 of all the county tests through those drive-up centers and drive-through centers, even though we're only 40% of the population of the county. Similarly with contact tracing. But no, the short answer is no. I ask those questions a lot. And there's no place that can give, I think, that level of granularity. We want to know it. But I'll address a couple of the things you said. We're not seeing a lot of spread among outdoor activities. So even if we were to go to a more strict stay-at-home order, I don't think we have to impose that in our trails and our parks, except where we see some places where people are crowded too close together. Our beaches, as long as people are maintaining their distance, I don't think we'll have to go back to that. We're not seeing it outdoor dining, any surges there. We are seeing it in places like factories, where people are too close to each other and employers don't put proper PPE or ventilation and other things, where employees themselves sometimes are working in hot factories and don't want to wear the mask, or their employers aren't giving them masks and they're scared to say anything about it. We're seeing it among young people, where they've gone from 30% to 60% of cases are 40 and under, and 70% 50 and under. So we think the biggest place is not specific places. It's people who are mixing their households, quite frankly. But here's an interesting statistic for you that I learned today. 10% of people, it's estimated in some studies, are spreading 80% of this disease. So we do think it's some of these super spreader events, these house parties, for instance, or people who get together, you know, thinking sometimes it's among friends. There's one case we've had a family and they all know each other. They're all like, we all get tested. We don't all live together. So we decided to throw this wedding anyways. We had not a wedding celebration, but 30 of us went to a restaurant and ate afterwards, and 16 of them have COVID-19. This is when you could still dine indoors. So we kind of know what we shouldn't be doing. And the longer this goes on, the more we like, well, I'll get together in my backyard with a few people not in my household. And maybe we'll be a little bit closer than we should be because we know each other. They're members of our family or they're my close friends and they say they once got tested. These tests are not like STD tests. You're not ready to go the next day. You could be infected the next day. It's only good for that day. And so I think people have a false sense of security. Protests, I think are, you know, this becomes a very political statement, and I'm going to try to make it apolitical. Dr. Frere said probably there's some spread of protests, especially where people didn't respect 6 feet and weren't wearing masks. Most people wore masks, but many of them were closer than 6 feet to each other. And when you're chanting as well, the spread, even though outdoor is a much better place to be than indoors, there's probably some, but she didn't see that as the main spread of what happened over the last month. It really was Memorial Day, long before even protests happened, where the first openings happened. The lesson that we all learned, and I've been straightforward and honest about, I always wanted us to wait 3 weeks or so, maybe 4, before we went to the next step. Well, the county went from 1 to suddenly a week later to a day later, and suddenly it was like dominoes. And I think the state and the county felt all this political pressure to open things up. I could have resisted that. I do have the power not to open up more aggressively, but to close down more aggressively. But I also felt like I could keep my gyms closed in LA City, but if you can go across the street to Long Beach and go to a gym, or West Hollywood, from a public health perspective, it wouldn't stop the spread and it would only punish our businesses. But I hope that we will have the discipline to wait 3 or 4 weeks before, and we're doing that with closures too. So we aren't going to reopen or go further with closing before seeing what happened 2.5 weeks ago. We can now see it's bearing fruit, it's successful. So I think we can hold and or consider opening back up some things in coming weeks. But let's hold on to what we have, especially because our schools won't have any shot of reopening if we can't stay off the state watch list for 14 days, and that's my goal.
Thanks, sir. The next question comes from Commissioner Ray Regalado from the Northwest San Pedro Neighborhood Council. Ray's hosting us tonight. He says, given there has been an order that no one will be disconnected from their DWP services for power, water, and sanitation, what can be done to minimize the impact of residents' bills because of higher usage? Many individuals are staying at home because of layoffs, loss of unemployment, childcare for school-aged children, work from home requirements due to employers' work locations being closed, and other COVID-19 related reasons. For water and electric usage, it has skyrocketed. The tiered pricing system in place charges a higher price as usage goes up. He asks, can DWP charge a base unit fee while residents are obligated to stay home during this pandemic time?
Ray, that's a really smart question. With the timing is great on it too, and it's a little bit of a complicated answer. I just asked Marty Adams, head of our DWP, about that, because I also want to know the statistics of how many people have not been able to pay their bills. And he said there's only really been a couple cycles since this started, because we still have the bi-monthly, even as we soon will be moving to monthly billing. So it's tough to know, but most people have been able to pay. I think immigrant households have been particularly hard hit, especially with anybody who's undocumented, because they were written out of federal legislation. But anybody who is a documented immigrant or a citizen, the message I've had for Washington is what you did actually worked. Poverty went down, not up during this time because of the guaranteed cash payments and the unemployment insurance. When we went off that cliff on Friday, though, and people who had the $600 supplemental dollars in unemployment got a 30% pay cut, which I think any senator or member of Congress who opposes reinstating that should get a 30% pay cut too right now. We actually were able to meet rent, pay bills, and we raised, as you know, a lot of money through the Angelino card to help those people that were left behind. I don't know if you all know this, it wasn't just that taxpayers who are undocumented couldn't get the cash payment, but if you were married to one of them, you didn't get a cash payment, even if you're American citizen. Your children could be American born and citizens, and they didn't get a payment. I mean, it was ridiculous. And these are some of the vital workers who were cleaning hospitals, working at grocery stores. It was just inhumane and stupid from a public health perspective because it puts them at greater risk and then it spreads to all of us. So we will look at that. And why I said it's complicated is whenever we change anything on the billing, we usually get a lawsuit from ratepayers who say, if you cannot change one thing without changing everything. So if you ever reduce the price, you can't ever roll it back, for instance. So we're looking at the legal issues, and I do want to provide some relief if we do start to see that, because you're right, more people are staying at home. Through the summer, we'll probably see much bigger bills when it comes to the hot days and things like that. So we're thinking creatively of ways to do that. But the best place we're advocating for, and it is on the House side of the HEROES Act, it looks like it's starting to get into the Republican side of the HEAL Act. That's what they're negotiating right now, of direct assistance for utilities to be able to provide that sort of assistance. That would be ideal, because then we don't have to mess with the rate structure and face lawsuits that may cripple DWP for many, many years. But we're not slowing down any of our DWP spending on our infrastructure, on the water and power side. We have some assistance for folks that are low income, so if they've lost jobs and dropped into that, there are discounts already available that we can help publicize with neighborhood councils, so we'll follow up with you on that. And we will probably know in the next few weeks what DWP can do legally, and we'll know what Washington will do as well. So we'll follow up with you, and your timing's really good on the question. Thank you.
Great. And so I see time's getting away from us. So the last question, how will you engage the community and process to reallocate the funds from the LAPD budget?
So it's great. You know, as I joke, if somebody said there's $2 billion available, you get $20 billion in proposals. When you say there's 150 million, there's usually $1 billion in proposals. Like literally one group came forward with $150 million worth of programs like the next day. And it was a great coalition of organizations I greatly respect. The next day, another coalition of folks came together. There is not going to be a singular process. I think the closest thing to some process will go through the city council, but they're putting that in the form of motions for different things, whether it's increasing money for a community safety partnership or whether it's looking at money for grid. I certainly want you to think more than 150 million. While that gets a lot of the press, we've got a number of hundreds of millions to spend. And even though we have to cut a lot in government and squeeze our belts tight, we have $700 million that direct advocacy that I did with somebody I know in the White House produced directly for cities. That was the first CARES Act. A lot of that has to go to repaying ourselves for the tests, for people who are at the testing centers, for buying PPE that we're sharing with hospitals that was very successful. And Gene Soroka at the port, as you all know, has been our chief logistics officer. And we found, while people were paying $10 for masks from other countries, we found 73-cent masks that are being manufactured down the 10 in Arizona that we're then sharing at cost with our hospitals. And you don't hear about PPE in LA anymore because of that. So we've been able to do a lot, but we are looking at probably more like $500 million in money that we will invest in fighting homelessness, which is disproportionately affecting the African-American community. And we're gonna have a racial lens on how we spend that, on the cash assistance that we've done for rent, on the business grants that we rolled out, which was 13 million, but by the time we're done, we're gonna have 30 million for direct business assistance and looking at that in communities of color. So long story short is, it's not about getting involved in one pot of funds. This year's budget will be an ongoing budget. So there's an ad hoc committee in the council on the coronavirus relief funds, the CARES Act dollars, which is 700 million. There's going to be some discussions on police reform, and some of the dollars of the 150 will go to pay for some of the alternate public safety programs that we put. And some of it we'll do directly because I have, under emergency powers, I can allocate directly to programs. So I would encourage you to let David, Johanna, and my team know ideas that you have. If you come together as a coalition, with specific asks. Nobody's going to get everything they ask for, but we're getting really good suggestions, and we're able to turn around money sometimes quicker than I've seen in my career to invest, a couple $100,000 there, a couple $1 million for this program, $5 million for legal defense, $30 million in business assistance, $200 million for buying more hotels and motels and apartments for people experiencing homelessness. So I really encourage you to send those to us. Let me know ideas you have around reimagining and co-creating public safety, as well as other places you think we should be investing this in the pandemic. Here, I know I got to go, but I'll throw it open to one question. I want to hear somebody ask a question.
There we go. I got one for you. I got one for you.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I'd like to get a haircut, see, and it's been like 6 or 7 months, and we have lots of places. We have a couple of thousand of neighborhood council participants. We have a lot of real experts. I'm a working molecular biologist myself, and I think that some of these local businesses ought to be possible to be opened on a case-by-case basis. And we could bring neighborhood councils and other volunteers into it and work with places like Fantastic Sam's and so on, anybody else who wanted to. And I'm just going to toss that out to you as a suggestion, and perhaps your assistants could deal with us. The other point is, I just want to second what Lori Jacobs said earlier. We have a problem with Dunn, all of us neighborhood councils down here, and your office needs to talk to us in a direct way about the way they have discriminated against our choice for employee. It's a real serious issue. We've been fighting it for a long time, and I don't believe that you are getting an accurate report. So thank you very much for being here. And it's incredible how many people are participating today. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Bob. I'll follow up and get that direct story. I'm not actually directly familiar with that at all. So I haven't gotten the wrong story. I probably haven't gotten the story at all. So let me educate myself on that and see if I can be of assistance in resolving that. I'm sorry you didn't get a haircut when the places were open. We are going to be announcing LA Al Fresco, probably 2.0, which is for businesses that can move some of that outdoors. I know there's some barbers who started doing that. I don't know if it's in violation of county regulations, but we're trying to convince the county to make sure we can do this together to allow a lot of businesses to, even when they're closed indoors, to figure out the protocols to be safe outdoors when those indoor spaces are deemed too risky. I think it is. I've thought a lot about this. Enforcement on a case-by-case basis is almost impossible. So you could build this up, but what we've experienced is if you say, okay, here's the right way to do it, and we work very closely with industries, with small business owners and different sectors, whether it's entertainment or whether it's personal care or others, to come up with these protocols and suggestions for how to do these things safely. But the moment you get one open, all the rest say, I gotta be open. And then you have folks who aren't abiding by those. So one of the ways you can help, and we've been talking to the state, is we wanna enlist folks to be kind of helpful business ambassadors. And we're doing this with our city employees already, but who can go into businesses and help them make sure that they're compliant. And what I hope to get is, whether it's a grading system or whether it's just a check, that you can get kind of an official sign that says you are compliant with the things that allow you to be open. So maybe it's not on a case-by-case basis for each one, but if your sector is allowed to be open, that you can at least say which ones are compliant with the full, have been approved and certified, because that reassures employees, makes them safer, it encourages customers, and it makes sure that the businesses can continue to have robust business. So we're happy to follow up on that, but hold tight for Al Fresco. Barbershops will be involved in there. And I would say jump on it. I like the long hair. It's very kind of 1980s, but if you need to cut
60s.
Cut it. 60s. I know that I started getting my hair cut by my wife, and it looked really good in the front. That's all that matters, I guess, for the camera. But I got my own shears and started doing them too. But we do want to help our local businesses. And I do hope that, given the good news of the last few weeks' work, that can be a place that the state allows us to start reopening, and maybe first al fresco and then back indoors with these protocols. Thanks, Bob.
Can we take another question?
Sure, one more, last one.
Hold on, I was after Bob, James.
And James, if we can't get to you, just make sure you put it in the chat and we'll make sure we get it answered. Go ahead.
Okay. So thank you for joining us. I know we all appreciate it, and we have almost 70 people here to listen to. My question is regarding the bridge homes and the commitment that was made to the residents around the bridge homes to provide 24 hours, 7 days a week presence of LAPD. We're really proud of our bridge home, and we opened it up on July 7th. I saw you there on the 6th. But the commitment to the community members immediately around it was made that there would be LAPD presence, and that hasn't been honored. So I'm hoping that you will reconsider and provide funding to make sure that that happens quickly.
Sure. A couple things on this. One is, let me show you the experience of the 18 or 17 that opened and this comes straight from the police chief's mouth. We put that in there. It's incredibly expensive because they already have the 24-hour security of the place itself. And we had a lot of police officers with nothing to do who just kind of would circle around bridge homes. And it's not to say that there's, that were taken out of the field from other places and kind of just sat there. And he has been very strong about this. And this is kind of the evolution of the model, not just about a promise made. We can fulfill that promise, but he's convinced, and I'm pretty convinced, that doesn't make anybody safer. They sit there not responding to anything, kind of getting paid to not work. The level of crime, we see crime spread out, and we have a commitment to making sure that bridge homes have at any moment people assigned who can respond quickly to them should there be anything in that immediate area. And that promise we will keep. It's a different model than people marching around, or in a car a couple blocks away, 24/7, very expensive, 3 different shifts, two shifts. And especially given that that's not the best place where we can fight crime or even deal with issues of crime in areas where there are encampments. And I want to be clear, I don't believe that serious crime, just because you're unhoused, you're not shielded from the consequences of that. On the flip side, I think all can agree people shouldn't be criminalized for being homeless. We could harass people for ticky-tack things, give them tickets all the time. They're going to stay homeless longer. They're not going to spend any time in jail. They're not going to move out of your neighborhood. We're just going to make it more difficult for them to ever exit from or get the services that they need. But the commitment around cleaning too, I was just asked this question, is there, especially where you have beds open. And the San Pedro Bridge Home Shelter, for instance, there are beds that are available. And so I think it is the beginning of a fair way forward of saying to folks that are encamped nearby, there's a bed waiting for you. You can stay there. You can bring your pets. You don't get kicked out each day. You're going to have case management. And if you're unwilling to go there, then I think you can start a conversation. Well, at least we're going to be cleaning these areas regularly. And we've started that this week in San Pedro. Councilmember Buscaino's initiated that to have that regular and to have the Care Plus teams back. But to be clear, if you don't see them cleaning that day, you're not going to notice a difference. The encampment, a Care Plus team can't sweep away an encampment and make them disappear. That's not their job. Their job is to clean, to make sure public health is addressed for the folks who live there on the street, as well for the rest of us, that we don't see spread of disease and other things like that. And I think we are committed to making sure we lead with services, we clean those areas, but the only solution to them moving has to be a bed that's available. What we haven't done yet anywhere in the city, but we're going to have to at a certain point reckon with when we do have excess bed space, is what do we do with people who refuse to move when there are beds that are available? And I know that's tough for folks who are advocates, because if you don't do this in a humane way, people may be very traumatized. You can't just say, you gotta do it, and if you don't, we're putting you in handcuffs. That may be people who are sexual and domestic violence survivors, people who have deep mental health issues, substance abuse, et cetera. It has to be done carefully, but I think it is fair to move towards it, that if by the 5th or 6th time, somebody who can and doesn't move, that communities should be able to move them. But the flip side is we need to keep building capacity. No bridge home shelter, no HHH stuff is enough for many of the parts of the city. And so I think it's going to be very interesting, because San Pedro is the first place where there's excess beds and there's people in camp very close by. And we should start leading with services, leading humanely, but over time saying, you can't just stay here when there's a bed down the street that we've invested in and a solution. This is not your destiny to stay on the street, and this is not our destiny as a neighborhood to have you permanently on the street. So we may keep that commitment on the cleaning. We'll have 24/7 security and LAPD available for each one. But I do think the model is evolving, whether they're going to be marching around, a place. But happy to follow up and to have PD explain that, and to show you the statistics too of why that wasn't an effective use of their resources at all.
Okay, that hasn't happened yet. I'm just letting you know.
Which part? Well, it's not they're not going to be marching around is my point. So
yeah,
I
but
think
that was the commitment you made to the residents, sir.
No, I'll tell you what I made the commitment. I said a commitment would that we'd have increased security and public safety where we put these and cleaning. We're going to meet the commitment of the cleaning. We're going to meet the commitment of public safety. It might not be in the same incarnation that everybody hears it in different ways. And I appreciate that, Linda. I really do. And if we do have a need for it and we want to have 24/7, like show us, you know, the incidents that are there and I will consider that. So I'm not closed-minded to it. But it has to be, again, not just, hey, the encampment is still here. It has to be, here's a place where, you know, we see not around bridge home shelters, but in other places where the encampment-based crime is a more effective place to put those police officers who, if they're just stuck around the few blocks around a bridge home, they're not at the other 15 encampments. So we want to be intelligent about making sure we serve crime wherever it is and not do something that feels good but isn't backed up by the stats. But I'm totally open-minded if the stats back it up that that's the place to do it. Okay. Thank you. Unfortunately, I know I'm about 25 minutes over what we talked about. I'm going to have to ask Noel and James to put their questions in the chat. I promise I will give you an answer and it'll come directly from me and my staff. But I'm going to have to go because I promised my daughter 20 minutes ago I would have dinner with her. So my apologies. I always try to put family first. But I'm happy to come back, you know, in a month, a couple months, whatever, and do this regularly, especially during the pandemic. It's been a really effective way to talk to lots of people all at once. And I want to thank you for the invitation. I'll follow up with Raquel, who I know is on here, about making sure that we have who you need and what you need. And from us too, let us know directly, as well as obviously your council offices. But I'll continue to come down wherever I can in a safe way, continue to address these, and I would love to come back to the Alliance sometime soon. Okay. Thank you all.
Thank
really
you very much
appreciate
for being
strength
here.
and love to each one of you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Bye.
Commissioner Reallocate, can I ask a question of David Price? So as a panelist, we're not able to ask questions in the Q&A box. So how can we get the questions to you if we have additional questions to the mayor?
For certain, you can email me at david.price@lacity.org. And for those who had questions in that chat, we're going to try to save the chat so that we can have those questions. But just in case, and technology is weird these days, just send that question to me at david.price@lacity.org, and we'll get back to you.
Question for David. Did I understand that the other representative has the COVID?
That's correct.
That is
Joanna.
Yeah, no, I know that. Please convey our best wishes to her. This is not happy.
Absolutely. We love Joanna. Please let her know we're thinking of her.
Absolutely, I will do.
So are you representing her, or basically?
No, we hope that she's recovering. I spoke with her the other day. She's doing a little bit better. She hopes to be back soon. She's trying to build up her strength again. And so I won't be covering all of the neighborhood council meetings, but if you have questions, please email me. We're praying that she can get back to us in the coming couple of weeks.
Okay,
so
thank
in the meantime, David, we can go ahead and communicate to you if we have any.
Oh yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me.
Okay, great, thank you.
John?
All right. We want to appreciate, I want to say that we appreciate the mayor's time with us today. David, please convey that for us. And I know we have a very engaged and involved community here, so you may be hearing from us more. The mayor, thank you so much for the time, and we really do hope that he comes back and spends a little bit more time with us in this time. So Dave, thanks a lot, and you're welcome to stay as long as you like.
I actually have to run. I have a church meeting to go to, so it's good to be with you all. But email me and we'll
David, if I had a nickel for every time someone told me they had a church meeting to run to,
I'm actually a pastor, so for those who don't know, I'm actually a pastor. So.
All right.
Just make sure it's on Zoom.
Okay. We'll let you go on this one.
All right. God bless. Have a good one, everybody.
Thank you very
Good
much.
night.
Take care.
Thanks.
One last, I want to hit at least at some point sooner than later what we're going to do with our HANC meetings. I think it's important that I believe that we continue them. I certainly don't want to be the one to organize them because I'm not an expert. You know, we had some hiccups, but I think as we keep on going, we'll do better on them. So if there's a way that I can get some feedback from you all one way or another so that we can, you know, get these things re-engaged, if that's the wish of the group, especially presidents and stuff.
Ray, I'm assuming this is where we are on the agenda now. Future
Yeah,
HANC?
That's where we're at. So,
okay, I think
what's the agenda item? Is this the future of HANC?
That's
yeah.
what I
Thank you.
just said. Okay, couple of suggestions. I think it's important that we continue the monthly meetings. I wish we would have gotten started a little quicker. But one of the things I think we need to prepare and circulate among the HANC presidents, delegates, etc., is something of a future plan for the coming year. And I have some ideas about that. Traditionally, we have rotated the chair. I think it would be a good idea. I know some of us are probably better at running these meetings than others technically, but I think for each of the Zoom meetings, we're going to need both a chair and a qualified moderator, for instance, to help. But what I'd like to see us do, and I'm happy to start this ball rolling via email, is prepare the schedule, look at, begin to gather topics, figure out a chair rotation. And one other very important thing that I had talked about last year, and that was setting up a more formal structure for HANC in terms of establishing it as an unincorporated association in which the member neighborhood councils would pay annual dues to cover our costs. I think we should probably invest in a separate Zoom account rather than being reliant on the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment, since technically the Harbor Association of Neighborhood Councils isn't really part of this formal city structure. I think we also should continue with, our minute taker. I think we should have recordings of meetings available to our stakeholders. And, we might kick together a little bit of a budget and figure out what annual dues would be for neighborhood councils, because we've all been putting out money on a regular basis annually to just pay for the minute taker. And we're going to need to figure out how to do a better job with that, I think. So that's my 2 cents. I'll be happy to send out something tomorrow with some proposals.
Doug, I would appreciate you carrying that water if you would. Any other comments? And yeah, Bob, I saw your hand.
Yeah, I'm not sure why HANC disappeared. I'm glad to see that it is back functioning. It's really important. And what I'm noticing is, hey, when the mayor shows up, all of a sudden we had 153 people at LANC. We had, about 80 people overall today. Next month, it'll be a lot smaller. And we should just go back to the rotation that we already had. We have gone in alphabetical order. No reason we can't continue to do that. I very much like Doug's idea of creating whatever you call it legally. We have some lawyers on our board who can tell us what those words mean, because I'm not entirely sure I understand. But yeah, a budget the neighborhood councils can, by law, contribute into. I think that we ought to go ahead and do that. If it's got to be a 501c3, that's a...
It doesn't.
Okay, Doug is saying it doesn't.
No.
Is there a way we can contribute money on the order
It's-
of probably $1,000 per year per neighborhood council, or a little bit less?
If I might reply, the legal entity is what's called an unincorporated association, and I served on the board of one of those for a number of years. That way you don't run into the problems of being nonprofit or any of the rest of it. It's just legal structure, very simple group to handle money.
Okay, my other comment is there needs to be some kind of a organizational or rule structure. You know, Ray, you took it upon yourself to organize this and basically to run it. And, you know, you do need some rule structure and you do need somebody to run it, but we ought to be able to have anybody who wants to participate come on as a panelist next time around. It's not going to be nearly as unwieldy as it was today. And, you know, if we're going to have guests who are going to bring in external people, we ought to have a way for people to ask them questions directly. This Q&A thing didn't work at all for me, and apparently that's because I had been elevated to panelist early on, and there was no way that anybody who was actually a panelist could function on Q&A. And we don't have chat. It would be nice to have chat. Since this will not be specifically a neighborhood council organization, we're going to have Zoom meetings. Let's have Zoom meetings with chat so that we can actually type messages to each other and to the whole group. Thanks.
Noel, I see your hand up. You want to weigh in? Yeah, and you can unmute yourself.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks for all of the effort keeping this going. And I agree that it's an important alliance. I agree with what Bob and Doug were just talking about. I'm sure when Doug sends out his proposals tomorrow, we'll have a chance to weigh in. But I'm 100% in favor of us contributing to have a separate Zoom account from the city. We're Harbor Alliance of Neighborhood Councils, or also kind of the Independent Harbor Alliance of Neighborhood Councils. And the whole neighborhood council system was set up so that NCs would be able to represent, and there's 99 of them. The reason for that is because every little section of the city has its own particular community, its own particular needs, and the neighborhood council system was set up to be able to represent those needs directly to the city, because there's no way that the city could have their finger on the pulse of everything that was going on until the neighborhood council system was set up. And every area has got its own unique requirements, its own unique needs. And I think that no one understands those needs as well as the people who live in those communities. And we represent a really, really big area. And it's the individual neighborhood councils are vital, and this organization together as a larger community is also vital. And it's important that we are independent to the point where we are able to represent the needs of our stakeholders as effectively as possible. So yeah, I agree with Bob and Doug, and I'm sure Doug will have some great proposals that we can review.
Thank you, Noel. Lori, and then Danielle, you're next.
Thank you, Ray, for organizing this. And now you know what it's like to run a meeting when there's technical problems. It's really no fun. And we all tried to weigh in and we all wanted to help. But the fact is, you know, Zoom meetings, all of them seem to have slightly different settings. We've all run into some meetings you can do this, some meetings you can't do that. The silver lining of this is that we're finally getting some real attendance at our Harbor Alliance. And that's awesome. So I look forward to that. We need to put a 2-minute limit when people talk. And I'm wondering, Julian, because you're more familiar with the settings, I've been on meetings where panelists can enter on Q&A, or maybe it's they enter on chat, although Dunn's told us not to use the chat feature. So I'd like to know what settings we would need so that both panelists and attendees have a way to enter questions. So we need to, you don't necessarily have to answer that right now, but we need to get a format that works for all of us and is fair and equitable, and everybody gets their 2 minutes to speak on an agenda item. And again, Ray, thank you. This was no fun, I'm sure. And I really appreciate all the extra efforts you went to make this happen. Thanks.
Welcome. Danielle, and then Julian, if you'd like to say something, you know, maybe you can help us with that as we go along. But I'll let Danielle make her statement.
Okay. First, I just want to apologize. I'm fighting bronchitis right now, so I might run out of breath when I'm speaking. I agree with everything that Doug is saying, and I don't think we should go with his idea and get our own Zoom license. And this whole panelist thing, I don't use it for my neighborhood council meeting. I use my own. So our board actually voted on that. And we have no problems. We haven't had any problems. My board members have their own licenses as well. They've been using it for their businesses. So again, we haven't ran into any problems. The other thing is when you're adding whatever you're adding, Doug, can we also add that we add an additional representative, because we only have one. So like Grant's our representative for our NC, but can we add that we have 2 representatives instead of the 1 so we can vote?
If I may, it's traditionally been up to each neighborhood council to determine its representation. For example, with Coastal San Pedro, any board member who shows up and participates in a HANC meeting is considered a delegate to HANC for the purposes of voting on issues. Those coastal board members who are present, say there's 2 or 3, they caucus and determine how that vote will be cast for the neighborhood council. So that's how we do it. In other neighborhood councils, they say, okay, here are the specific people who are tasked with that. So I would, you know, we'll put together some bylaws, but I would leave it up to each council to determine how many reps, how they're going to vote, with the one thing that each council gets 1 vote. That's traditionally what we've done for the last,
Doug, I wonder,
years, whatever.
Ray, Doug, I wonder if I could add real briefly to Danielle. You know, you've been to a lot of HANC meetings before the lockdown, and I think it was pretty obvious that the sort of voting structure had been relaxed quite a bit. And sometimes we just sort of took a vote of everybody around the table. We didn't do the roll call of neighborhood councils. I always thought of it as the roll call of states, you know, from an old TV program. Maybe we will end up doing more informal discussion for a while. And when we take up specific motions, well, then we can do it in an extremely formal manner. I'm not sure how we're going to caucus on the screen, except by, you know, hand gestures or something, but it should be fun.
Well, as long as people use all their fingers when they raise their hands.
Yeah, I was going to suggest one other thing, which was that we have a public meeting for the local small business owners and people who have been struggling. And we talk about the sorts of issues in terms of getting them open. It was sort of, you know, half in and half out of what I was trying to suggest to the mayor earlier. Maybe neighborhood councils should be contributing as to what the rules for opening and closing ought to be. You know, it's kind of nice of the mayor to show up to a couple of meetings this week. He really hasn't even mentioned us more than twice on his press conferences over the last 4 months. So something's happening, you know, maybe he's running for Senate or something.
Bob brings up a point that some of us have kicked around a little bit. I think one of the very useful things that the Harbor Alliance could do going forward is we could potentially offer up an occasional forum on subjects such as Bob working with chambers of commerce, for instance, on business issues related to this. I would point out that Coastal San Pedro has a board member who works for the Centers for Disease Control. And she is qualified to speak on behalf of the organization, for instance. And we had a presentation from her at Coastal last month, but she would be willing to put together a whole panel of experts to talk about COVID-19 and those issues. And that's the kind of thing I think that HANC could potentially present.
So if I can ask a question, I think I heard that there's a desire to restart the monthly meetings. And I would like to echo my support to that, because I think it's an extremely important way for all our neighborhood councils to talk to each other, at least in that respect. And so if I can ask the question, is there a neighborhood council out there? We know we still have some representation from neighborhood councils. Who would like to take the reins and arrange for the next one, and when would you like to have it?
Well, who was next in alphabetical?
I don't that I don't have the information. I
don't even remember the last meeting we had. It must have been what, February?
I just sent it to Doug.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
It was in March.
Yes.
We had a meeting in March.
March, yeah.
And who chaired it back then?
I believe Grant. Yes.
Okay, Grant is raising his hand, so he must be agreeing.
I remember sitting next to Grant, who was chairing, unless I'm crazy.
And I just want to let you know that Grant was waving his hand with all his fingers up. So,
is there somebody who would particularly like to take on organizing the next meeting?
That's the question.
And that's not
I thought Doug was going to send proposals.
Yeah, let me put something together tomorrow and email to everybody, and we can start there. If that's okay, rather than starting to, take it apart. One of the things I'll suggest is a chair rota so that we can see where we are and where we want.
I'm sorry, what did you just say? A chair something?
Rota.
Rota.
Yes, it would be a schedule of who's chairing over the next few months.
Oh.
And we can either pick it up from where we left off, or we can just start over. But traditionally, it's been alphabetical.
okay.
I'm happy to do that.
Are we okay? Then I'd just like to say, are we in agreement? Let's see, Danielle, you okay with that? We'll see. Okay, thumbs up. Carrie, thumbs up. Celia, thumbs up. The rest of you, okay. So it looks like that's it. Doug, you have the responsibility now to get that out to all of us, and then we can start putting that together.
I'll have plenty of time tomorrow as long as I skip coffee at Sirens.
No, you're not allowed to do that. So
drink extra.
Yeah.
Actually, that's the first thing the committee I want to put together is going to do is close down sirens.
Well, that's nice of you, Bob.
Okay, just kidding.
So, you know, it's what time is it? It's, to me, it feels like it's, yeah. It's
8
just after
o'clock.
8. Yeah, and I don't know if anybody wants to continue conversation or has any last words they'd like to say before I'd like to ask
Just-
if we can adjourn, so.
Before we do that, Cheryl sent me the schedule, and if we meet in September and use the same schedule, it will be Harbor City, Cherry.
Harbor City?
Yeah.
If they want to do it.
Yeah, just based on the previous schedule. So they would be up for September.
We can do that.
Okay. I'll send that out tomorrow along with it.
Is that you, Danielle?
Yeah. I could do that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Danielle. Anything else?
Do we have any response from Julian on the settings?
That's right. Yeah, Julian, I'm sorry.
Problem. So regarding the setting, we are strongly recommend to not make the chat feature available for neighborhood council meeting because they are brown acted. And the chat would allow to have a side conversation that might not be even seen by people who are joining the meeting by phone. So for that reason, we follow the recommendation of our city attorney's office, and we strongly recommend to not make the chat feature available. Regarding your alliance meeting, it's different. You're not brown acted, and this is your call, I want to say. If you want to be as close as possible from a brown acted meeting, I would recommend to not make available the chat feature. If your choice is different, this is your decision. You can even not use the webinar format, but a meeting format. Just know that we recommend the webinar format because it's much easier to manage the public in a way. I don't know if you already attended a meeting where there was Zoom bombing or there was very vocal attendees that would have taken the opportunity to unmute themselves and overspeak board member. That's why we strongly recommend the webinar format for a neighborhood council meeting. Now, if you think that you are not exposed to that kind of risk in your alliance meeting, you have totally the right to use a meeting format instead of a webinar format. One thing that I want to share with you, if you want to use your own, your personal or your professional Zoom account, it's possible too. An alliance is not, even a neighborhood council can do that. Just maybe a little benefit of using ours. The one that the department is providing is because we have unlimited storage. So if you want to make all the meeting, record all the meeting and make all these recordings available at all time to the public, just by providing a link that you embed in your website or that you can share with the public, and you never have to remove because you would be short on storage. That's a benefit of using the Zoom account that the department is providing. Now it's, once again, this is your choice. So
Julian, though, I just want to understand, the question I had is there a Zoom setting where panelists can enter questions? You're saying the only way you can do that is with the chat feature.
I would say my temporary answer is indeed that.
Okay.
Let me check if there is a way the panelists can ask questions.
And I do not understand this ruling that a chat, is a violation of a Brown Act. How about my cell phone? People can be texting each other all day long. I mean, what's the difference between that and a chat? I truly don't understand that decision whatsoever.
So I strongly recommend you to not have a group chat with the majority of the quorum of board members. That would be a potential Brown Act violation. So the same way I don't recommend you to use the chat feature on Zoom, I don't recommend you to have group chat on your cell phone. Of course, this is your choice. Once again, know that just for the story, you can be if you have exchange with fellow board members on your phone, they can be subject to PRA. So just
I understand
just
that we should be on our honor system, but I'm just saying you have no more control over a chat feature than you do with a cell phone. Yes, nobody should be using it. Our neighborhood council says do not use your phones during a meeting in person. But right now, you can't tell if I'm chatting with my phone.
Yeah, absolutely. It's you can be on the same time on your screen chatting with your fellow board members. I can't see it. I just recommend not doing it. You know, we are just here to provide recommendation. At the end, you are a self-governed body, and you are the one at the chair at the board. So that's
I understand.
recommendation. Regarding your original question, I will ask tomorrow. We have a specific tech meeting about Zoom, so I will see if the Q&A feature can be used to ask questions for panelists. I wouldn't be surprised if it's not possible. Just think that Zoom has not been developed for that kind of use for government bodies or brown-acted structure. But just think that when they started Zoom using webinar, it was just to do conferences, and you have people on stage and you have people in the public, and usually the people on stage are not asking questions. So that's the spirit of Zoom originally. Now we are using Zoom for other purposes and to be government bodies. We are suggesting Zoom to improve their different features to be more appropriate for our use.
So let me ask you one other technical question, Julian. Sorry to cut you off.
No problem.
So the attendees
These
that
are
are
not technical.
the attendees that are thank you, Bob, Mr.
Well, they're
Biles.
not. They're political statements on the board of
No,
Ed.
the attendees that can enter questions. So if we can't get to all of them, is there a way that we can save those questions after we're off the meeting so we can see them so that we could later on look at them and address them? Or once the meeting's over, we lose that information? Because that's not part of the audio recording. Is there a way to save
because
that?
I know that you can save the chat.
But we're not supposed to use chat.
Yeah, I know. Let me come back to you with that question too.
Okay,
So
thank
I have
you.
the Q&A, 2 questions.
I'd like to weigh in on the chat argument because wasn't I the one who brought it up earlier? Sorry.
I'm gonna interrupt. Ray, you have some raised hands.
Yeah.
Are these on the attendee side?
Yes, you've got 3 raised hands. I just want to make sure you're aware of it.
Okay.
We ought to take those people. Why don't you just make them panelists so that we can see them? And
There's 4 now.
yeah, Gwendolyn, come on in.
Alexander and James Allen.
Right. James,
Okay.
I thought you were already a panelist.
Thank you. Yeah, I saw the unmute this time. Great. Glenn Bailey. So just a couple things. First of all, I would suggest, since Raquel Beltran was on at the time I raised my hand, usually at alliance meetings, we invite and encourage the general manager to have a dialogue, but I understand you've got other organizational things you're working on. Secondly, I did see on your agenda report from your budget advocates, and I know at least one of them is on this call that I can see. And then lastly, regarding Doug's comment on the fiscal issue, just know that one of the Neighbor Council alliances, the Neighbor Council Sustainability Alliance, while they are similarly unincorporated as the other alliances, they did do a fiscal sponsorship with a group that does that as a business model. They are a 501c3 nonprofit. They've got 20-some similar organizations that they're the fiscal sponsor for. And that alliance has been able to get grants from both public and private and have the ability to obtain monies from neighborhood councils, like via a neighborhood purposes grant, which might be the easiest way for HANC, and for that matter, any other alliance that adopts that model, to be able to raise funds. And you're insulated from any conflict of interest, although I certainly recommend you still, at least abstain. But because the actual organization board does not include any of the neighborhood council boards, they do all the accounting, etc. So if you want any more information on that, you can contact the Sustainability Alliance. I can get you in touch with them. Another alliance is looking to do something similar as well. That's it. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Glenn. I'll be in touch.
I see Alexandria Nassif. You can unmute yourself. Alexandria?
Hello, hi, thank you. Hi, Alexandria Nassif. I am a member of the Sherman Oaks Neighborhood Council Education Committee and Outreach Committee. Thank you all for allowing me to speak and all the work you all do. I just wanted to give a quick brief update of some exciting projects that both of our committees are working on. We are hoping to start a food grant program to help our stakeholders fight food insecurities exacerbated by the pandemic. We are also hoping to do a drive-up food donation drive, as well as accepting donations from our stakeholders to donate to other local food banks and things. We are also having a lecture series. So in light of recent social events, we are having a lecture series where professors, community college and university professors will speak. So our first, pending approval from the City Attorney's Office, our first lecturer will be Dr. George Lipsitz from UCSB. His lecture will address historic housing policies, particularly in Los Angeles, and how they currently impact our neighborhoods today. And then, yes, we've also started a book series similar to the lecture series, but just a set of resources, books, articles, movies, and things that we're providing to our stakeholders as a resource for those who wish to learn more and are seeking resources on race and equity and social justice and those things. Thank you again. Good night.
Thank you. James? James Allen?
I think I got unintentionally kicked off the panel here.
Oh, let me promote you back. Did you want to say anything?
I just did it.
You already did it? Thank you. Let's see.
There we are. I was reminded a couple months ago by Janice Hahn, who was on the city council that created neighborhood councils. And her advice and perspective is that neighborhood councils were an experiment in democracy, in bringing the power of the city closer to the people. That was the original intent. And I think it's important for us all to remember that we're still in the middle of this experiment. And so the concept of HANC and how HANC is organized and our relationship with Dunn and how that ebbs and flows in terms of them trying to regulate us and us trying to exert our independence is all part of this ongoing experiment, which I think that the mayor is probably more on our side than perhaps the department is. But I think that we need to continue to push towards what we believe is a core sense of democratic representation for our constituents. And I believe that that's the intent of the charter amendment. I believe it's the intent of the majority of the people of Los Angeles. And I think it's the intent of just about everybody who's ever sat on one of these neighborhood councils. So Doug, you know, you've got my support in terms of moving forward with what we do with HANC. We are technologically challenged by this, you know, new, you know, virtual reality that we have to live in right now. But that should not stop us. I think we're all intelligent enough to be able to overcome all of these impediments and actually provide some real engagement, civic engagement, that allows us to have these discussions and have, you know, 60 or 100 or, you know, maybe even 1,000 people come to a meeting that they normally might not. So, you know, we need to keep it up. And there are a number of initiatives that Coastal has put in regarding policing, and Central put in a motion on policing, supporting the mayor's, you know, $150 million. The one thing that would really help a lot in terms of Harbor Division, LAPD, would be if we actually had a civilian review panel made up of representatives from neighborhood councils. And that was put into our motion, our community impact statement through the mayor. But I would like to recommend that that is something that gets put on the agenda for your next HANC meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Gwen? You can unmute yourself, Gwen, and make a statement.
Okay, can you hear me now?
There you go.
Yeah, took a while. How are you guys? To James Allen's point, I believe that the HANC meetings are a really good venue for coordinating the neighborhood councils, especially during this time where we should all have a very cohesive message. So this is a really good point where I believe that we should have more attendance by everyone on the council, especially at this time. If you guys are going to be starting it. So in regards to the democracy of it, I hope that yeah, we can try to get more community involvement as well in some way. But in regards to the HANC meetings, I hope that we can draw more people to it and make it a little bit more of a requirement to attend for the board meeting, for the board members.
Okay. That's it, Gwen?
That's it.
All right, great, thank you. Yeah, I neglected to say that there was a budget advocates agenda item. So I think we kind of see our way forward here. So as far as HANC is concerned and the future of it, thank you, Doug, for volunteering to put that piece together, and we can work it through that way. So who is here that could represent the budget advocates? Danielle, that's you?
Yeah, it's always been me. I'm not on the executive board this year. I declined my several nominations to be on it. That's fine if I'm really struggling. So, I mean, if they want to go ahead and give a report, I know that John, our outreach chair, is on the line too. If they want to give a report, that'd be great. And if I feel like saying something after, that'd be fine.
Somebody from the LA Budget Advocates is raising their hand.
There is?
Okay. Yeah, that's our outreach chair.
I haven't muted.
Okay, I see that.
I haven't muted.
Yeah, hi everybody, this is John D. Thank you so much, Danielle. Just a quick introduction, as Danielle said, I'm lucky enough to be the Vice Chair of Outreach and Communications this year of the Budget Advocates. And one thing that I wanted and like I've honestly heard the theme all night, and I wanted to relate to you, like the importance of carrying that torch. You know, I think the unanimous decision tonight was for you guys to continue to meet, and I think, like many of you mentioned, during this time, it is imperative that there are central points of that we can come to as different committees and disseminate information to you. We are going to do our best, and I know that anybody who's been on HANC or a member of the Harbor Neighborhood Council system knows that you have not had representation that's equal to your numbers and your voice on that committee, or sometimes throughout the city. And it's my job this year to work with Danielle and Clarita and Gina, who are all outstanding at what they do and what they bring to the table in their own right, to make sure that you are updated every single month with 2 different reports. So now I'm just going to kind of cut to the chase and give you a couple quick updates, because for those of you that are familiar with us, we are making a ton of changes this year. Some of them are very exciting. So first and foremost, the budget advocates, we are elected 3 from every neighborhood council region, so 36 in total from the 12 different regions, to represent you, your neighborhood councils, and your stakeholders on everything related to the budget. And I emphasize the word everything because if we're doing any real deep dive into any issue, it all comes back to what? How much money is getting tossed at it. And if you don't have a voice in that process, in the mayor's and the city council's budget process, none of the services that we've all been discussing tonight and that I've heard you mention are going to get handled. And we need you to have basically an active role in that. So what we're doing this year, we're going to be hosting quarterly town halls via Zoom. So we want to hear on an active basis how things are responding, how city services are you getting your fair share? What's the status of them during these COVID times? Has anything dropped off? What are your general concerns? But most notably, the change that we're implementing is rather than one big white paper, which is essentially a report that is an exhaustive report that details our recommendations through every city department on what can be improved to basically squeeze the most out of every dollar, every tax dollar we spend. We're going to break that gigantic report into quarterly smaller reports that are more issue-based. And what we hope to do by that is help educate and express your concerns in something that's actually digestible by our elected officials, because we know their attention spans sometimes get drawn away when we use too many words. So the first thing that we're going to discuss in one of our town halls, and one of the things that we want to hear back from you is specifically equity in the distribution of your city services. So in early October, please look out for, and leading up to that time, notices about this town hall. Again, it's going to be via Zoom. So again, at the click of a button, we can hear exactly what you have to say about this process. Another thing that we're doing is we actually took a poll of all of our representatives, our budget advocates, and said, what are your priorities and what are the priorities of your neighborhood council and your stakeholders? So some of the top ones were investigating some of the details surrounding the LAPD budget, our infrastructure investment, including like streets, sidewalks, trees, you name it, bridges, and especially in your area, we know that those things obviously need critical maintenance at this point, and city services, again, and the equitable distribution of them. So we want to make sure that we hear from you, again, on an active basis, whether it be through your budget advocates or through either your monthly neighborhood council meetings or through these targeted general assembly meetings. I know someone said reference to an old show. My dad used to watch that show, so I actually know what you're talking about. But just moving on, we are also forming a bunch of committees this year, again, issue-based. So Danielle and your budget advocates, Gina and Clarita, are going to send out links where you're going to be able to join these committees. And whether or not you want to have input or just kind of hear what we're talking about, that's going to be absolutely critical to making sure that our recommendations, once we meet with these departments, are targeted at what you need, not at what we think you need or anything that we might have personally motivating us, right? So we want you not only to join to hear your input, but keep us accountable. A little bit more about us, just to kind of close this up for you and not waste any more time. We meet twice a month as a general body. That's the first Monday of every month at 7 p.m. via Zoom, and the third Saturday. We have a couple changes. We're actually going to be meeting not only, I believe it's in 2 weeks or a week and a half, third Saturday in August, but we're going to be meeting on that 5th Monday. So that's August 31st. We have a Labor Day following that. So a little bit of shift in our schedule. And then we'll also be making some accommodations for the holiday, the Jewish holiday later in September. So please visit our website, listen to Danielle and again, all your representatives at every meeting they're at, because they're gonna have a lot of important information on the budget, because I think Mr. Mayor probably had a little bit too much jest in his tone of voice when he was discussing just how critical the nature of our budgetary problems and fiscal decisions are this year. They are going to be dire. So please stay tuned, stay involved, and thank you for listening to me tonight.
Ray, I know that was long. Thank you, John. I've always been very open and transparent with all of you. And every time we've had our HANC meetings, or I've been at your neighborhood council meetings, I've always been extremely transparent and open. This is very rare that we have a lot of people on this meeting. And I can't continue to be silent and not tell you the real deal of what's going on with budget advocates, okay? That's not me. So budget advocates had a meeting at the end of our term, and we were discussing the people's budget. It got very divisive. It got very racial. It got very intense. It got to the point where I was very uncomfortable and contemplating whether I was going to stay on the budget advocates. Since we got all new members on the budget advocates, we have effectively filled a lot of those seats with minority NC members. We now represent half of minority budget advocates, and all very skilled and educated in what they do, okay? All of you know me, and you know I've been serving on the budget advocates for a very long time. And it's been very hard for me to make the voice of the harbor very strong with the budget advocates. My voice has always been drowned out. I'm so happy this year because I have 2 strong Latinas that are on the side of me fighting as well for the harbor, and we're making sure that our voice is strong. And John said that, but not how I'm gonna say it, which is real, okay? So Gina, with her experience of what's going on in the port, we're gonna start addressing some sustainability issues, okay? And the pollution and everything that's going on in our area. Clarissa, I've tasked her with addressing our youth. We need to get more youth programs here in the harbor. And I'm doing homelessness and public works. And I'm telling you, for the 6 years that I've been on Budget Advocates, I've been advocating for the entire city. This year's different. We're gonna have our year this year. And so I'm giving you that promise now. And because they are opening it up and you guys can come to our meetings, come to our meetings. Our voices have to be heard. I wanna say kudos to Lori, who has been speaking up and been saying that we were not given, adequate time to discuss what needed to be discussed in our town hall meeting. And so did the treasurer, I believe, from Harbor Gateway South, Gustavo. He also spoke up and said something. This has been the fight that I've been fighting for 6 years on Budget Advocates. We have to turn this around. And if Budget Advocates are not giving us the rightful voice that we have earned, you need to take that back to your neighborhood councils and pass motions that refer to the budget. You don't have to agree with the budget advocates in what we do. Wilmington did that last year. They supported our work and they submitted their own recommendations, and I empower all of you to do the same. If you don't feel that the budget advocates are representing you and your areas, you have to address these issues at your NC meetings.
What does all the budget advocates being Latinx have to do with anything with the budget? I'm totally lost on that, Danielle.
So They wanted, so there was a lot of requests for us to take a position on the people's budget. They didn't want to do it in the end. They felt that Black Lives Matter is political and the people's budget is political. And there has been several comments saying that the people's budget does not reflect reality and they have no idea of what they're speaking about. That is what they said. So we never took a position on Black Lives Matter. I know Coastal did. Coastal took a position and our neighborhood council did. And it did become very racial. There was a lot of racial comments that have been made. But like, again, I felt very uncomfortable. There was a discussion saying that the reason why Black and brown people are getting COVID and dying is because we don't ingest vitamin D from the sun. It's because of our skin color. These are not appropriate discussions that budget advocates should be having. So again, I've always been transparent and real with a lot of you, and I'm gonna continue to do that now.
Yeah, I just thank you, Danielle. Just to kind of back Danielle up, I have been on this committee for a couple years, and while we know that inclusion kind of leads to diversity, and that it doesn't necessarily matter who's on the committee, it needs to be representative of the people and the wishes that they are putting forth, and I can attest that that is not what happened, just to corroborate what Danielle has been saying. So we do urge you to stay involved. And I think that's one of the things I just wanted to close with again, is like accountability and making sure that you show up and listen to what we have to say. And if you don't agree with it, please let us know. So again, thank you guys very much tonight. And I appreciate you meeting, and I hope to be here again. Thank you.
I have a hand raised from Alexandria Henry. I'm sorry, where was it? Alexandria Nassif, I'm sorry. Alexandria, would you like to make a comment?
Yes, thank you for allowing me to speak, Ray. Again, Alexandria Nassif, Sherman Oaks Neighborhood Council Education and Outreach Committee. I just wanted to thank Danielle and thank John. Howard Katchen is our Neighborhood Council Budget Advocates representative. I just wanted to thank you all again for having this meeting. I just wanted to comment and reiterate that this is a little bit of what the intention or where the intention was behind our lecture series. We're calling it the Know Your Neighbor series, but the intention is to be inclusive and really help people understand inequities, particularly in Los Angeles. I graduated from UCSB from the Department of Black Studies, and a lot of my research focused on historical policies and practices that were originally targeted towards Black people when obviously during enslavement and during Jim Crow era, but how those policies and practices have really trickled down and sort of revamped and are present and real and relevant to today. So our lecture series in particular is really served to educate. So I will absolutely, fingers crossed, once we get the approval from the city's attorney's office and our board, I will share this information with you all. And I look forward to assisting outreach and this alliance through virtual meetings, assisting everyone with sharing information regarding equity and creating community between us all Angelinos and Southern Californians. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexandria. I have another hand up by Glenn Bailey. Glenn?
Yes, thank you. I wasn't going to say anything on this, but I think I can just add a couple things. First of all, in addition to Danielle, who I've served with for many years, and also on the city clerk's funding work group. So I've seen, with different, we've been working on different topics. Melanie Lebrecq was a budget advocate during the past term. You've had representation. I think part of the challenge for the harbor also when we had the in-person meetings was, and I think that's true for some of the other citywide meetings, is, making the long trip, to downtown City Hall for some of these meetings. The good thing now with, the cloud and the silver lining in the cloud is that, with virtual meetings, that distance is not there. You're now able to do it virtually. So I definitely second what Danielle said about, participation in it, and because it's going to be easier in that respect. Secondly, just like John, we're both budget advocates from the Valley. If I didn't say that, I'm also budget advocate, but also like John from the Valley. There is no way that we, even though we're part of a team of 36 throughout the city, know all the issues that affect all the issues in the city. And certainly, even from just this meeting, and even though it's been a few years since I've been to a HANC meeting at Kaiser, the issues that affect your part of the neighborhood are obviously very significant. And I'm sure I'm only hearing a tip of the iceberg. And that's part of what needs to happen, not just the 3 very capable folks representing you this year, but to help educate all of the remaining 33 budget advocates so we're better informed what's going on, especially when we have major issues, a major department like the harbor, Port of LA, just as an example. So I just wanted to know that you've got not just the 3 representing Region 12, but you've got some other folks listening as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. We're now at 8:40. Is there anything else we need to cover? Because I'd like to, in respect to all of you, if you'd like to end the meeting. I think not without its challenges, but I think it was very successful. I hope most of you, if not all of you, feel that way. I mean, we're a good for a good part of it. We were, I think, very insightful. I think we asked some very good and pointed questions from our area. I think we have a plan as far as HANC is concerned moving forward. I think this is the strength of HANC. We energize each other in coming together like this. So I'm willing to take a motion, even though it's not necessary for adjournment, unless there's something that really has to be said.
I have something. I have one thing, which is, can we, relative to Doug's proposals, can we tentatively set September 2nd as our next meeting?
I don't think there's any objection to that.
Okay, well, it's just on the agenda. So, being a minute person, I'm just doing my
I
thing.
got a question. Is that the Labor Day weekend?
Yes, it is.
But it's a Wednesday.
But that's a Wednesday.
It's the Wednesday following Labor Day.
Yeah,
No.
there used to be a film festival that
Can't,
same
if it's
moment.
September 2nd, it can't be the Wednesday following Labor Day. It'd be the Wednesday prior to Labor Day.
Prior to Labor Day, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, I just
Everybody's
want
at home now. I just want to point out that we really should enable chat, and it is expected that Dunn and the city attorney will say, no, because they've been doing that to us for 20 years. We do understand that.
Could I ask additional comments like that? I'll send out an email and just
Not a
shoot them
problem.
over and we'll share them, because Ray is about to completely fade into the dark. And
Bob,
Thank you, Ray.
They said recommended. They didn't say anything Julian didn't say anything was mandatory. He said those
No.
are recommendations. So
we'll work all that out.
Hey, Julian, would you ask Freddie Cooper Ames to give me a call?
I can.
Thank
I
you.
talked to him regularly.
Thank you.
All right, all. Good night, and stay safe, everyone.
And thank you. I love you all.
Okay.
Take care. Danielle, hope you feel better.
we
Thank
love
you.
you too, Cheryl.
Okay, wasn't sure. I was unmuted. Bye, guys.
See you all. Good
Thank
night.
you,
Julian,
everybody.
thank you for your help today.
Yeah,
tonight.
much
Really appreciate
Yeah,
it.
we appreciate it a lot. Thank you.
All right, all.
Thanks.
Good night.
Thank you, Laurie.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Good night.